Hey Ben, welcome back, man. How you going?
I'm well, thanks. I'm well, thank you.
All right, so we're talking again. This is number 8, right?
Yep. That was
Wow,
number 8.
8 ultras in 8 months. Tell me what it was, where it was, how far it was, and how you went, please.
Well, this was on the west side of Michigan, so in Holland. So it's a city, not the country. So which is right on Lake Michigan. And so I am doing the 50K, and it was a good time in terms of how I felt and everything. I felt really good. Um, Made some new friends, and not my fastest time, but it's okay. Like I said, I'm not out there to break records. I'm just out there having fun.
Yeah, and I think you were telling me that it was like, I mean, the course is like mountain bike trail sort of stuff. It's not an easy flat course, and it's not even on reasonably surfaced roads either, right?
No. It was a lot of ruts, a lot of sand also. But it's not the hardest, but it wasn't the fastest either. So
So how much running in the actual sand did you end up doing? What sort of distance was on in sand?
in sand, in each loop there was about a mile or so. I'd say a good
Okay.
mile. Very fine sand. It got my shoe. I didn't wear gaiters. I should have, and I kind of paid the price for that. But it was good. It was good.
I don't know about that. Running in the sand is really hard work, man, especially if you've got to run. How many loops was it? 4.
Well, it's kind of an odd course. I ended up doing 6 loops, 6 of these 4.6 mile loops, and then you run a mile and a half to that place and a mile and a half back. And so ended up being right at like 31 miles total. And
Okay,
so,
but like so in the scheme of things, if that was a mile stretch, you effectively did 6 miles in the sand.
yeah, about that.
Yes. Okay. Now that's hectic, man. So I think you were saying that got a blister for the first time or something. Was that from the sand, or was it just uh,
It,
other issues?
it was the sand, and it happened within the first 2 miles. I could feel it in my heel rubbing in my sock, which I've never had any issues with that. And I've a company called CEP Compression. They hooked me up with some socks, and so I've never had blister issues. And some sand got in, and it just rubbed my heel very, very rough.
Wow. Okay. Wow. So I think you were telling me before, while we were chatting before we started the interview for real, that you pretty much just got back in the car and drove home afterwards. And tell me how that went. How did you feel when you got home? How quickly have you been able to get back on the road again?
Well, that was a mistake. I should have cooled down, and I felt I rushed for time, but I should have cooled down. I didn't. I just got in. I was still sweating and everything, and I drove home. I was really stiff when I got out of the car. That was not great, but I had to stretch later on, and that probably delayed my recovery a little more. But I was in the pool the next day, and and then Monday I was running again.
Right. So you took one day off, and then you were back on the road again.
Yeah, that's generally how I do it now. Just because for these races, it's like a weekend day I missed from my kids and stuff, the family. So I generally take that day. I've noticed over the last couple races, last 3 specifically, that I felt really good the next day. Little sore, but nothing where if I had to get out and run again, I could, if I needed to. But I'd usually take the time with the kids, and we spend it in the water for the most part, and then the following day I'm back at it. So
Well, yeah. So as we've mentioned a couple of times in some of the previous discussions that we've had here, that I think that's something that you're noticing. I've noticed that the recovery from these efforts um, is pretty amazing when we're eating this way. So it's
yeah, some of it, I really think that the kind of the anti-inflammatory nature of the keto diet or low carb approach makes a big difference. The other big one is obviously training adaptations as well. That happened just, I've been doing this now for going on 9 months. If you talk about the training, maybe 10, if you talk about the actual training times, the adaptation that's happened. And so for me, the diet is huge though. And when I do have cycled back carbs back in,
Mhm.
I notice a difference as well in terms of recovery. And so that's just more in terms of like some of the traditional chronic pain issues I've had. So I cycled back on for a little bit, just with seeing how many more carbs I could have. But at one point I hit 200 in a day, a couple times, and I didn't like how I felt. And so for this race, I went in ketosis and in that state. I didn't go fast, but I didn't actually stop at all. And so going through an aid station, I'd grab water and I'd refill. But like I said, I had maybe 3 F-bombs and it's a couple pickles, and that's it.
Yeah, I think that's something that I noticed when we spoke after the first couple of events that you did, that you were still talking about how much feeding you still were trying to do during the race, and I felt like that maybe you wouldn't necessarily need that much once you properly adapted. And I'm really interested to hear that's kind of been a natural progression for you, that you're as you've become totally adapted, that you are. I mean, that's the whole point of this, is that theoretically you're running on fat, and you have those stores, and you can actually function and keep running for a long time without having to actually refuel. So it's very interesting that and I didn't really bring it up to you, so it's happened as a natural progression over the months. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see, and I'm curious because a lot of times when they do kind of experiments and they do research with people doing this, they're generally about between 130 and 160 pounds, and I go anywhere between 220 and 240. I'll have big swings, and so, but I have such a large amount of muscle mass,
right,
that I don't know. I'm curious to see, and I haven't talked to anyone that's actually ever looked at that, because again, when I go to these races, I'm a big guy, and so it's the most people I see are half of me.
Half of the size, yeah. And I mean it's very important that people understand that I mean, you're basically like a linebacker.
Yeah.
You're not a Kenyan distance runner, and the difference in body comp of those two is massive. When you compare to Zach Bitter, who's like a world record holder, 100K or something like that, 100 miles. He came and spoke at our event in July, and I mean, he's this skinny, tiny little guy compared to you. So it's all the more effort for you to get through a distance like that than it is for someone like him. So it's just adds to the impressiveness of what you're doing, because you're showing that not only can the average person do it, but even the average person who shouldn't necessarily be even running these kinds of distances, and yet you're doing it and recovering really quickly from it afterwards, which is important.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting learning curve as well as I've done this, and I'm not sure in terms of fueling, in terms of muscle mass and the size. But one of the things I've kind of come to the conclusion is that this past race, I was actually really lucky, because I ran the bulk of it with a guy who was in his 60s. And so my times were pretty slow, but I didn't stop. And, like I said, I stopped to refill my water bottle, and I would change my shirt. And so, like, I think the race photos, I'm in like four or five different shirts. So it's kind of fun. People didn't realize I was the same person coming through, because I kept changing my shirt. But the guy was talking with, he'd done over 500 marathons and ultras. And so I really enjoyed just learning from him and his experiences.
Yeah.
And so it was an awesome experience. But what I realized is that I can sustain like a 13, 14-minute pace. I don't want to say indefinitely, but I left them after probably 15 miles, 15, 16 miles. I said, I actually have to speed up because I got to get home.
Right.
And so, but the last third of the course, I ran pretty fast in terms of, keeping around like between like a 7 and 8 minute mile.
Wow.
And I obviously was hurting a little bit, but I realized that I can sustain that pace because I do feel that I'm fat adapted, and I was in ketosis, and not necessarily one means the other, but just historically based on how my performance, I feel like the one thing I actually should be doing to help my performance is the engine is good, it's burning efficiently. I just need to create more power. And so I've been putting a lot of miles in training wise. And I realized that I'm looking back historically, my theory is that if I increase my force production, that will actually increase my speed time. And if I can marry that with the efficiency that, I'm fueling, I can actually start to get faster and faster and faster. And I figure if I can do that, I did under a sub 4-hour marathon, 40 pounds heavier. If I can keep losing weight and increase power, then I can probably get a sub 3-hour if I really drop 25 more pounds.
So the 3-hour marathon is a pretty hectic goal. That's a really quick marathon. So I'd like to see you aim for like a 3.5, and then maybe a 3:15, and then a 3. Let's take it in steps and work at it. I think if you work hard enough and you're determined enough, anything's achievable. So that's a pretty awesome goal. So 8 out of 12. When is your next marathon? When is your next ultra marathon? Not marathon. And when is it? How far is it? What are you planning next?
This will be interesting because so the 22nd of September is that's the next ultra, and that's a 50K, and then October 5th, so like a couple weeks later, I'm doing another. That's my 10th.
Right.
And then the week after that, I'm actually at work. I'm a part of the running team, and they're doing the Detroit Marathon. So I don't know if I'll be doing. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to handle that amount of races and that amount of time. So I know that I'll have ultras within a couple of weeks of each other. So.
So yeah, I mean, maybe how far or how long after the race is the marathon?
Because really, at the end of the day, I'm not a professional runner, and that's never been my my goal is to be a professional runner. But it's been to inspire people,
yeah.
And we're told things that we should, we're always given our limitations in life. We're told what we can't do, whether it's an expectation as a child or even as an adult. We're always given our constraints, or we're always told what we can and can't do. Whether that be by published best practices or whatever, and who would have thought eating bacon would help me lose almost 200 pounds? That's a guy that weighs 300 pounds should start running ultra marathons. And then who would have said that he could run one a month?
Yeah.
All these things are, this kind of N of 1 I'm doing we're not defining expectations or things. We're pushing the limits of what we can do because, like I said, if this can inspire someone else to get up and try something, then do it. I don't ever recommend ultra marathons like what I'm doing now. I've seen it actually. I was talking to Robert Sykes about this the other day, but I find actually the training for these ultras and these races actually has kind of gotten in the way of my getting in my journey in terms of like losing weight, because I kind of plateau and I'll fluctuate because I can only, there's so much time in the day that I have to run and get these miles in. I realize that it's kind of forcing me to plateau in the way, I have to schedule my days and things around these races and stuff. And so once this is over, I think I could actually get into better shape than I am now. Not that I'm in great shape, but you know.
So you should take a look on our YouTube channel. There's a talk by Ben Bokikio. I think it's up on YouTube now. It was a breakout talk that he did at our event, and he talks about resistance training being an integral part of establishing those metabolic pathways that help with weight loss as much as the dropping carbohydrates from the diet can do. So it'd be really interesting for you to look at that and see, once you've done your 12th ultra, is to take a look at focusing on that for a bit and seeing if you can get your weight to what you feel is a more ideal weight. And then maybe, if you keep running in the background, that might be when that weight comes down, that you can take a more serious look at trying to do that sub 3-hour marathon. So, and then you're not running ultra distances, you're just training to run a standard marathon, not ultras. So you're not getting those huge miles in all the time.
So I know so many people that decide to run races to lose weight, part of their journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I've come to that realization that's probably the worst thing you can do if you're trying to lose weight is to say, hey, I'm going to run some people do 10Ks or half marathons or marathons. And it's been I guess there's more than one way to Rome. I just wouldn't take it running, if all roads lead to Rome, and there's a lot of different ways we can do that. I think that confuses people along the way, because we hear one thing and another, and running will help me lose weight, or resistance training, or low carb, or what if I do intermittent fasting, and a lot of times that can confuse us, and we get so lost in the process that we aren't trying to live that best life, getting healthy, and that's the one thing that, just reducing the carbs overall. Anything else I've implemented, that's always been the start of that change and living that best life. And so it's opened the door for me to do this ultra running stunt, or this adventure, whatever you want to call it. It's opened up the door for me to interact with people and meet people, and kind of get my confidence back, and just in terms of how I feel about myself. And so
Well, once again, it's an awesome job, and you mentioned a couple of times about trying to inspire people and stuff, and I think you're absolutely achieving that. And I look forward to talking to you in September, later in September, after your 9th run.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll chat then, man.
Sounds good. Thanks, Doug.
Okay, bye.